Welcome back to Get Your Voice Out There. I'm Roberta Chadis, and this show is dedicated to giving people a platform to talk about the passions in their lives and to allow people in the community to really get their voice out there. And I'm really happy today. We have a wonderful guest and her son. This is Liz Sacco. She's the president of Diabetic Dabs, and she brought her son, David Sacco, to join us today. Welcome to Get Your Voice Out There.
Thank you for having us.
David?
Thank you for having us.
I'm just delighted. And what we want to start off with today is a little bit about you and your life and how the type 1 diabetes came into your life, and just a little history.
Sure.
Okay?
Once again, my name is Liz, and I have, 4 boys. I have David, who is 13 now, Tommy, who is 12, and I have twin boys, AJ and Chris, that will be turning 10 in November. And back in 2011, David was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and it was a complete shock. We were blindsided. There was not diabetes present on my side of the family or on my husband's side of the family, so it was very, very overwhelming. However, we have learned to manage it and adjust it, and we have now become very passionate for the diabetes community now that we are a member. And we are trying to do what we can to improve the lives of people that live with diabetes.
I think it's great. And David, maybe you could share with us a little bit about how you felt that there was something that wasn't working right. How did you know that something wasn't quite right with you?
Well, I realized first I was playing hockey, and I was really tired for some reason. I had no idea why, and I had to leave the ice one time to go to the bathroom, which never would have happened before. And then after the hockey season ended, I would when I came home from school or something, I'd have 2 bottles of water right away, and then I'd have to use the bathroom. And this was constant. So my mom finally took me to the doctors, and then they told me that I should go to the hospital because I have type 1 diabetes.
Very interesting. And so the awareness of being thirsty, needing the bathroom, and an unusual amount of stress related to that, I would imagine.
There's no question. I remember it was a week of just constant thirst, constant urination, and again, I have 3 other boys, and you know what's normal and you know what's not normal.
That's true.
And what my mother-in-law had a friend that their grandson had diabetes, and I remember asking, what are the symptoms that indicated that it was diabetes, and constant urination and thirst was one of it. So within that one window, I remember thinking to myself, something's not right. It's time to bring him in.
Now, we're going to talk about the product that evolved, but maybe a little bit of a description of what the challenges of having type 1 diabetes. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, let's start with what type 1 diabetes is. So type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune an autoimmune disease that affects the pancreas. And what happens in people that have type 1 diabetes is their pancreas doesn't produce insulin. And insulin is the hormone that allows your body to make energy from the food. So in David's case, or anybody that's living with type 1 diabetes, what happens is their immune system attacks and destroys those insulin-producing cells, which are also known as beta cells. There isn't a known cause. There's some thoughts that the factors might be environmental as well as genetic, and there isn't a cure. So until there's a cure, David or anybody with type 1 will be insulin dependent.
I see. So what's your day like, David?
Kind of chaotic. I mean, during school, I sometimes have to leave the room to go test, and then I have hockey after school most days, so I have to test before I go on the ice, and then when I come home, if I have to eat afterwards, I have to test before that.
And what are you testing?
My blood sugar.
Okay, so that has to be, what does that have to be during the day?
They want it to be between 80 and 180. And then anything below 80 is considered low, and you need sugar to bring you up. If you're higher than that, they want you to give what's called a correction, which you insert your number into your diabetic pump, and it gives you insulin to bring your number down.
I see.
There's a lot of extra steps with people that have diabetes. It's kind of an ongoing process of testing sugar levels, and that's going to vary based on age and type of diabetes, whether it's type 1 or type 2. But type 1, for example, especially with David, he minimally tests his blood sugars 6 to 10 times in a given day. You're constantly counting carbs. You have to know how many carbs are going into your body, and then it's constant adjustment with your insulin, as far as injecting your insulin or adjusting your insulin. So they have a lot of extra steps in their day than people that don't live with diabetes, for sure.
So let's talk a little bit about food, because the first thing I think about when I think about diabetes, I know my dad had diabetes as an adult. There were many things related to sugar that were restricted, but I would imagine maybe it's a little different. Tell me about your favorite foods and maybe some of the foods that you need to stay away from.
Well, me personally, I eat a lot of foods with carbs. I just don't eat them that often. Like pasta, I eat a lot, but that still has a lot of carbs. But we found like a bunch of stuff that it's like a protein plus kind of pasta, so it's not all sugar like a regular type of pasta is. And so that's good, so I don't have to like stay away from stuff I like.
That's good.
They've made huge progress and advancements with the technology for managing diabetes. I think if you compare it from even 20 years ago, for example, the technology to manage, he alluded earlier to the pump, and not everybody is on the pump, but what it is, it's a device that allows the insulin to be automatically put into his system through his direction. However, he's really not restricted at this point he's not restricted to certain foods, I should say. I know back in the day you kind of heard like, well, if somebody has diabetes, they're not allowed to have ice cream, right?
Right.
They've come so far with the technology that he's able to eat what he would like or what he chooses to eat. It's just as far as managing that and making sure that the insulin is covered for the carbs that are going into his body.
That's wonderful. Now, I bet the audience is probably listening here and wondering, how am I going to get in touch with this woman who knows a lot? And I think it's time for us to talk about what the challenge was that brought you to the diabetic dabs.
Sure. So, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of steps in a life of somebody that lives with diabetes.
Yes.
And through the course of adjusting our life, what I found was that there wasn't a clean or safe way to remove the excess blood from his finger after testing. And again, he tests many times a day, again, 6 to 10 times a day. And I was very frustrated because I thought to myself, it's one more added step in the whole process of his day. And to me, it just seemed like a very simple problem, but there wasn't a simple solution. Hence, Diabetic Dabs was born, which is the product that I developed to ensure a clean and hygienic way to remove the excess blood.
I see. So what you do is you have to take a needle.
So they refer to it as a lancet. So what happens is you get the blood glucose monitoring kit, so that you have a meter that comes with the test strips and the lancet. And what he does is he needs to prick his finger. He puts a small amount of the blood from his finger onto the test strip, and it reads it, and that gives him his number. That gives the blood glucose number. And then from there, he can dictate whether he's in range, whether he needs to add insulin, whether he needs to add food. But what would happen is there was always blood left on his finger afterwards. And then he ended up, as a result, forming a habit of either putting it on his clothes or the inside of his case, which is typical, right? He's a typical young boy, I get it. I know a lot of people lick their finger because there wasn't a product that was designed for that need. And it was just, as I mentioned, just one more added frustration. I mean, you're balancing a lot when you're managing diabetes as a parent, or more importantly, as an individual. And it was just one added step that to me was, there has to be a simple solution. Sure enough,
so
here we are.
So now there you are, the mother of 4. You have this idea, and you've decided to produce it.
Yes.
What's that like?
It's exciting. It's challenging. I would say one of the biggest obstacles was actually finding somebody to manufacture the product. I was told numerous times that it could not be done because there was not equipment out there that had the capabilities to assemble the product. By far, that was the largest hurdle, but my persistence paid off, and thank goodness, because the product is now on the market.
I think that's fabulous. So tell our audience how they might be able to reach you to get access to this product.
Sure. So we have a website, which is www.diabeticdabs.com, and the product is available online. It's also available through Amazon.com, as well as a website called Lock and Main.
Excellent. And I'm also thinking about you as a business person and also having a full family to run with the health issue. What kind of advice would you like to give to people who may have challenges like you, not necessarily diabetes, but a health issue?
So I find that there's a lot of parallel from a business as well as a personal standpoint. I think that there's certainly an overlap, and some of the lessons that I have learned is the importance of people and relationships and connections and people helping people, and that could be from starting a business to a health challenge. Support's huge in every aspect. So I would say to find the value in relationships. Also educating yourself, again, whether you're dealing with business or with personal issues. The more you know, as the saying goes, knowledge is power, right? The more you know and the more you understand, especially with diabetes, it's a challenging process, but if you're educated, and it's a little bit easier to manage. And then, of course, mindset. Mindset's crucial, you know, to be positive and perseverance, never giving up. And I always say, especially with diabetes, you don't want to fall victim to the disease. You want to be the victor, because you don't want diabetes to win. And that would be true with even starting a business. You can't give up, right? You have to just keep pushing forward to succeed.
It's true. I love your attitude. And back to you, David, because I'm curious how you relate to the kids at school and your family, and how are they handling your little health issue there?
Everyone's really good. I mean, everyone pretty much knows the basics of it, like what they need to know. Like everyone at school, if I'm acting weird or something like that, they need to know that I should like test my blood sugar or something like that. Also, my friends out of school and my family are very good about it, always reminding me to check, because sometimes I'll be playing, forget to check, and I'll have to be reminded. So it's good.
We've been very blessed with a wonderful family and circle of friends, because they've been very, very proactive as to understanding how to help manage the diabetes. So we're very, very grateful for that.
That is great. So the family, you're eating together. Are there any differences in the menu on the table?
Nope. Everyone eats the same.
The only thing that I would say, because our schedule is so crazy sometimes with a lot of kids and a lot of activities, we tend to have late dinners. So my choice of dinner might be different the later on in the evening it is, because I don't want a heavily high-carb dinner if it's late at night. So I would say the choice of what is being served may differ depending on the time, but it certainly doesn't differ for the purposes of the people at the table.
I see. And what about sports? Are you active in any kind of sports?
Yeah, I play hockey pretty much around year. When I'm not playing hockey, I play golf. So I'm active all year.
That's excellent. And you look in great shape.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I understand you have some pets in the house.
We do.
They keep you active as well?
We do. We just got ourselves 2 puppies, so that adds to our chaos. We like an organized chaos, I like to call it. But and they're very involved. He's very active. All my boys are very active, and he's my inspiration, right? So I'm not the one that's living with it day in and day out, but I see what the challenges are, and I say it all the time. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? It doesn't take a break, it doesn't take a vacation, and he handles it like a champ, for sure.
I think I can see that you are just a very happy family. I can tell. I want to redirect the conversation a little bit to what we can do, or what we can do, the audience can do, to help type 1 diabetes, or to help families. Is there something that we could tell our audience? Some causes, some things that they could be helping?
So I like to say that we all wish we weren't part of the diabetes community, right? We wish that it was a community that didn't exist, but the reality is that it does exist. And the people that I've met, the relationships that I've formed, I wouldn't change for anything in the world. It's an unbelievable support group, the resources that are available, and there's unbelievable organizations within the community, excuse me, that of course are all striving for the same goal, and that is to improve the lives of people that have diabetes. And there's a lot of opportunities, whether you become an advocate, whether you become a volunteer, whether you donate to research, camps. There's a multitude of options for people to get involved and help the diabetes community. Excuse me.
That is wonderful. And as far as research, there's always something written up in, I read in the news, I see on television, there's always people working on this. Do you know of anything that's happening now?
I think the future for type 1 looks very hopeful. I think that people should be optimistic. I know that there's some trials on the bionic pancreas, which is a medical device that would automatically regulate the blood glucose level that people that have type 1 diabetes. I also had the pleasure of attending an evening where Dr. Melton from Harvard was the presenter, and he has succeeded in developing stem cells into beta cells. And as I alluded to earlier, the beta cells are the insulin-producing cells that people with type 1 do not have, which is huge. Those are huge advancements. I think much like anything in science and technology, there's timetables that are associated with that. I don't know what those time frames will be, but I think for sure it gives everybody in the type 1 community hope.
That's great. And any advice that you might have for kids that are struggling with any kind of health issues?
Don't give up. I mean, at first, like, me and my whole family were scared, but now it's like second nature to us. So even though it might feel like it's kind of the end of the world in the beginning, it will all get better. So just don't give up.
Excellent advice from David Sacco.
Yeah.
That is great to hear. I know, sometimes we have so many challenges as a young person to do well in school and just be, able to cope with all of the things that you have to do and everything you have to learn, that having a little bit of a health issue can bring people down. So I'm glad to hear those words of advice. I also want to ask you if you have any stories you'd like to share about your experience. Any trips you've taken that have been a good example of your family out there with someone who has to deal with this health issue? Are there challenges at all? I'm thinking of one.
I'm trying to think specifically. I think when you go on vacation, you go places, there's always...
It's a lot harder than when you're at home.
there's those extra steps that we always say. There's extra packing, there's extra...
It's not always
extra
like
steps.
controlled as it, like, this summer we went to North Carolina and everyone's running around and there's not like a lot of organization because it's a bunch of families together, so it's a little less
You have to be more
structured.
cognizant.
Yeah.
You have to be more
Right.
cognizant to manage it.
Right.
You've got it.
I was thinking of bathroom needs. I was thinking of just sanitary things. Maybe I'm thinking that it's more than it really is.
Well, he's very good. He almost has it down to a science now, so we're lucky in that aspect. And he typically has all the necessary supplies. And we're blessed also because he's able to feel when his body goes low, which is when some of the serious complications can come in. Whereas he can feel it, we always have something on him, a fast-acting sugar. So I think from my perspective and as a parent, it makes my life a little bit easier. I can imagine that if you had a child that was not able to feel that and they were off fishing or they were off swimming with their cousins, to me it's always a constant, where is he? Are you checking on him? Is he okay? But ultimately I know that he's able to feel that. So I think I have an advantage, probably more so than a lot of parents do. But you do, as he said, it almost becomes second nature to you. You get into a routine, you get into what's necessary to travel, what's necessary to go to different places. And as he touched on earlier, at first it's very overwhelming. And I will play on the advice that I would give to the audience and people in the audience is it's okay to be overwhelmed, because I don't think that anybody gets a diagnosis, whether it's them personally or on my behalf as a parent, that you're not overwhelmed. But it does get better, and that is where it's so important to ask questions and to learn. And with each day that passes, you're going to have a challenge, but then with each day that passes, you'll have the success.
I think that's excellent. And it's nice to see the rapport that you both have. You develop a stronger relationship, I think. What do you think, David? What do you think of your mother and what she's done with diabetic dabs?
I think it's great, and I like how part of the money that she makes goes to diabetic research. So I think it's great, yeah.
That's great. Just think of all of the people that you're helping. It's
That's
amazing.
Our goal. That's our goal.
Really. And is there anything that you've been thinking about that you might want to do to help at all? Some creative plans for the future?
Just like fundraisers, stuff like that, like partake in fundraisers, donate money, all of that, just to help when I can.
That's great.
I like to use him, of course, I'm going to use my parent card here as a bragger and say, just as a role model. He really is super independent. He's been super independent from the moment that he was diagnosed. He didn't let it bring him down. He learned how to manage it, and he doesn't let it stop him. So even he may not be aware that he's doing anything, but I think day in and day out, the people that see him, he's a role model for.
I think it's great, and my observation as I'm listening to you is there's a very inspirational energy that is coming from the both of you that says, yes, we have a challenge here, but we're all working together to have a life and just move forward. So I want to recognize that and really express to the audience that a challenge will bring you closer. And it may not be a health challenge that we have in our lives, but any kind of challenge to find a solution to a problem. So thank you so much for doing what you're doing. And I think the last part of my question would be to maybe share a lesson that you've learned, one lesson that you've learned from all of this experience that you'd like to share with the audience.
One of my favorite sayings is adversity is meant to make you better and not bitter. And again, I think that would be my lesson, is to learn that life is going to throw you curveballs. And it's really a matter of how you choose to handle those hardships that make all the difference.
That's true. And we met each other, what, 2 years ago?
Several, yeah. I was going to say several years ago.
I think so. And I've followed your path and watched you reach out to a huge community of people that are taking advantage of your product. So I want to commend you on really taking the initiative and bringing a valuable product out to help others.
Well,
So
thank
that's,
you.
That's
And
what it's
thank
all
you for
about.
having me and help spread the word. I appreciate that.
That is great. And I want to thank both of you for being on Get Your Voice Out There. This is exactly the messages that need to be shared. So David,
Thank you for having me.
thank you for coming on board.
And
Liz,
thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
it's been a pleasure to really hear more about what's going on in that community of type 1 diabetes. And I want to thank our audience for watching tonight or whenever you're watching. And I also want to welcome you to watch another show with Get Your Voice Out There. Thank you very much.